So here are the stories. You can, if you read Josephus, you remember the first story from Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate comes here, he moves in over there, and he takes shields. He marches shields with the symbol of Rome on them up to Jerusalem, and he wants to put them in the temple area. And he tries to put them in the temple area, and the Jews say, "No, we have no graven images here." And he says, "We're Rome, doesn't matter." And they say, "Oh, it matters." And so they come down here. First day here, they have an audience with Pontius Pilate. He doesn't show. Second day, they have an audience with Pontius Pilate, and they explain it. And he says, "I'll meet you tomorrow. I'll meet you in the arena tomorrow." Yeah. What made you laugh?
I want to ruin the story for you.
Yeah, because you know what the arena does with the sand, right?
The janitorial staff again.
That's right. So the third day they meet here, Pontius Pilate is somewhere right here, because remember his palace is right there. And he says, "You have a choice. You have a choice. You leave the standards up in Jerusalem, or you die." And the Jewish leaders bow their heads and put their foreheads to the ground, exposing the back of their necks. And they say, "Then we die." Pontius Pilate is like,
"Well, that didn't work."
They got guts. They got really deep convictions. So he moves the standards back out of Jerusalem and he puts them in the palace. That's episode 1. Who won?
Jews.
Episode 2. He takes standards up to Jerusalem, this is later, with no symbol on it. He doesn't put it in the temple area, he puts them in the palace, Herod's palace in Jerusalem. So it's not like, hey, I'm putting them on display with the Roman Emperor. He puts these shields up there, and they say, no, you can't put shields up here, it's not going to work. And he says, "There's no symbol on it, what are you talking about?" And they say, it can't happen, we're not going to do it. And so he says, "Tough, they're staying this time, they're absolutely staying." And so they go over his head to the governor of Syria, who's the supervisor of the region, even over Pontius Pilate. And he sends a message to Pilate that says, "Just take him out of Jerusalem and bring him back." And so he brings him back. That's episode 2. Who won?
Jews.
Third episode. Being a patron society, Pilate's going to use some of his money to provide water for the people of Jerusalem, which probably irked him. So he's going to he builds this pipeline that goes from the quarries or the Solomon's pools in Bethlehem all the way to Jerusalem, and he uses some money that's in the temple treasury as well as his own money to do that. And people learned that he has used temple treasury money, probably did it with the permission of the leaders that were there. You know the story, right? When we did this when we were on the Temple Mount, right? And this is where Pilate calls some of the soldiers in common dress in amongst the people, and at the signal they pull out their sword, and and the people's blood is mixed with their sacrifice. That's what's mentioned in the scripture, right? In the John story. All right. Round 3, who won?
Pilate.
Who are you voting for?
I'm voting for the Jews.
Why?
I think they were able to use that later on to cause trouble.
So they got a token in this now, huh? That's episode 3. Episode 4 that we know of from Pilate's side. They bring this Galilean Jew to Pilate and say, he's a bad guy. That's their first charge. He's a bad guy. And Pilate says, "I don't find anything wrong with him." And they say, "You know what? If you do this, you are no longer a friend of Caesar." You know Paul Meyer about this. When you're appointed a prefect or a governor, or you get one of those things, you're called an amicus Caesarius, a friend of Caesar. And there are rings that we have with that on it. And so when they say you are no longer a friend of Caesar, they're saying, hey, we're going to go over your head again, essentially. And so that's when Pilate says, well, it's just one body. Okay, to have it your way, I'm washing my hands of this. I'm going to just govern you the way you want to be governed. Go ahead and kill him. That's episode 4. Who wins?
God.
We do.
God.
Right? God does, right? It's like that it looks on the surface like the Jews are, you're right. That's episode 4. So the first episode happens here. The fifth episode is with the Samaritans, where the Samaritans are going to have a rally and they're going to go up to the top of Mount Gerizim, and Pilate sends some troops over there because they are going up there for a sacred act, but they're going up with all sorts of weapons. And so as they're heading up the mountain, Pilate puts his soldiers on the top, and as the Samaritans run up, Pilate has his troops then kill the Samaritans that are running up with weapons. That's episode 5. Pilate's the prefect here for 10 years. Second longest prefecture of anybody out here in Palestine. So he wasn't horrible. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, who wants to deal with those Jews?
Yeah. So Jesus is the 4th of the 5 stories we know. But the first one happens right here. Okay, let's go up this way. If you want to go down and put your feet in the Mediterranean, go ahead and do this. Is a good place to do that.
This was the arena, and arena stood for sand. That soaked up the blood of the gladiators. And this is where Pilate would come down and see matches and horse racing and chariot racing. And that's where he asked the Jews to come down and meet him in the arena when they said, no, we would not like your standards, your flags to be in our temple. And he said, come down to the arena. And then they did, and he said, yep, you got a choice. You can take down the standards, or I'm sorry, we can keep the standards up, or you can die. And the Jews bowed their heads, and they said, we'll die then. And he said, wow, these guys have some guts. This is the arena. See the stands?